Alright, welcome back everyone to the Sableyes YouTube channel. We're starting up a bit of a small new series here where we're going to be looking over some of the key matchups going into the European International Championship very soon. I'm joined today by Blake Whiteman. How's it going today, Blake?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Jordan.
And what deck are you playing today? Did you say you're playing Pedro's list?
I'm playing, Pedro's list from the special event, the Zapdos Jolteon list that he won with.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about the matchup of Zapdos, Jirachi versus Ultra Necrozma Malamar, which is two of the better decks going into Germany, and there's a lot of interesting, things to talk about with this matchup, because it's typically a fairly close matchup. Obviously, if you're interested in this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, or whatever you feel like doing, really. But with that, I think we may as well get into a game here, Blake.
Yep, no worries.
Feel free to send a challenge when you're ready.
If I can just find it. It's always awkward to find the Z's.
Not a problem.
Alright, there we go.
Mine's right at the beginning because I remembered to favourite it.
Well, there's too many favourites on this on this account, so there's like 15 different favourites, and all the way at the end is Zapdos.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. But going into this matchup, Blake, who would you say is favoured? What would you give the favourable matchup to here?
I would say that Zapdos is favoured going into the matchup just because it puts on, it forces Malamar to play super awkwardly and rush. When typically, when Malamar takes its time and it sets up, it beats everything. Which is why the deck is so strong. But against this deck, which just likes to Guzma kill Inkays like turn after turn after turn, it gets really, really awkward for the Malamar player to keep up. But
yeah,
if they do just establish a firm core, they get down 3 Inkays the first turn, get down a Giratina and attach to it, or a Deoxys if they play it. Then suddenly it becomes really difficult for the Zapdos Jolteon player to keep up.
I agree with that, and there's a lot of things that Malamar does to kind of basically make it a 50-50 matchup, because it really is a non-GX versus non-GX equal price trade. But one of the big cards in this matchup, we actually see you open with the Absol, which is pretty difficult card for Malamar to deal with sometimes.
Yeah. This is a really awkward opening hands. Got so many nice cards that either one-time use, like Electropower, or key stadiums that you don't want to get replaced until they come up, like Thunder Mountain.
And I'm guessing you're just trying to thin your hand down for a Lily there.
Yep.
I guess Choice Band on Absol isn't the most ideal place to put it.
No, but it was one of the only cards I felt comfortable just randomly burning and getting rid of. I mean, this turn, really all I want to do is just get some Jirachi down thin and work towards killing as many Malamars and stuff as possible.
Yeah, I think you don't really need to do anything this turn besides put yourself in a good position for next turn. And as you said, you really want to force me to try and get my setup as soon as possible. You want to force me to get as many engaging players as possible before they get picked off by Zapdos, because if I miss a turn 2 attack in this matchup, it can very quickly be a one-sided match.
Yeah.
Alright, going into my turn, I think one of the main cards, and you mentioned it briefly before, in this matchup, is the Deoxys, because if you're attacking with Giratina in this matchup, you can't really afford to put the 40 damage anywhere. No matter where you put it, it's always going to be bad. So
it allows them to save an Electropower, which is huge, because obviously they can only play 4 copies of it, unless they play the rare Electrocharger, which not variants are running.
Yeah, exactly.
So being able to make them use their Electropowers, you can sort of put them on a clock as to how many knockouts they can actually take with straight knockouts.
But yeah, with the Deoxys, you can kind of just attack with that every turn without having to worry about kind of chaining Giratinas, because it's going to be hard for them to take back-to-back knockouts on Deoxys. The only downside is if you're already running one Rescue Stretcher, it can kind of be hard to get Deoxys back when you need it, but overall, it's really important to try and get Deoxys turn 2 in this matchup. You realistically want to basically aim to get turn 2 Deoxys almost every game. I think if you miss it, it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's
one of the benefits is that Deoxys is just it's one of the only cards in the deck also that attacks without consequence. With Ultra Necrozma, there's the downside of having to find the switching mechanism or the extra attachment depending on the matchup to just keep attacking with it. Whereas Deoxys, you can just like attach, attack.
And yeah, I did actually forget already that you've got the Absol down, so I can't retreat the Sinke, which is a little annoying, but not the end of the world. I think I might actually just manually switch into Jirachi. It's probably a fine thing to do.
At least you got the option. But,
exactly.
But it appears it's always just a skateboard now. So.
I mean, it's not going to be bad. It's not as good as it would be on the Jirachi, but if I'm assuming you're going to knock this Jirachi out, it's actually almost better to have it on the Inkay on the bench. And I'd say I got a pretty ideal turn 1 for this matchup. I got triple Inkay down with a Deoxys. I've got myself in a pretty decent turn to get a turn 2 knockout with Deoxys, which is all you really need to do in this matchup. But obviously you're going first, which means you've had a turn to set up. You're going to be able to take the first prize more than likely, and it's going to be on me to try and catch up from there.
Yeah, that's it. I have a pretty spicy turn lined up, so pretty excited.
Sounds interesting. What is your opinion on Jolteon GX in this matchup? How do you think that kind of folds into the matchup where you're usually wanting to use non-EXs every turn?
I feel like Jolteon is a card that can apply like an insane amount of pressure with like its spread and early it's more of I think it's better going seconds because you can kill Inkay, spread 30, and then obviously do the same thing to a Malamar that's already got the 30 on it because they obviously want to evolve it to avoid an easy knockout. So they can find themselves in a really troublesome spot where they've lost like 2 Inkays or like 2 Inkays and a Malamar really early on without having really done anything.
Yeah, and one of the things that I hate about Jolteon in this matchup is when I'm using Giratina to attack, my favorite place to put the damage is typically onto Jirachi, and having Jolteon kind of stops you from doing that because you never want to give them the opportunity to just goose for an Inkay and take 2 knockouts in one turn with Electro Bullet. Interesting play you're going for with the Coco Prism already. It's usually a card that you see on a big turn when you're powering up a Jolteon or a Tapu Koko or something, but using it here just to power up Zapdos. But you've got the knockout on Deoxys. Oh boy.
Yeah, I feel like this is the best kill the Deoxys because like you've got 3 Inkays down. I feel like killing an Inkay, like it's either killing Jirachi or the Deoxys, and I feel like if you want to, you can get the attack no matter what. So I feel like I'd rather just try and force you to attack with something that isn't Deoxys as early as possible. That way you're spreading damage and you make it easier.
Yeah, it certainly screwed over my turn for this specific turn. I'm not going to be able to
also, I
get off
feel
an attack here.
Like when it's this early in the game, you don't have the time or like the resources to try to easily stretch it to get it back for the attack straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
Because your deck isn't thinned enough.
The only good thing about this, though, is that you did waste 2 Electro Powers, and even though it kind of sucks making me put damage on my board with Giratina if I use it, it does make it less, or it makes it harder for you to punish due to having less Electro Powers in deck.
Yeah, that is true.
Now, obviously, I've missed a knockout on Zapdos, which is very bad in this deck matchup. As we were just saying, you always want to take a turn 2 knockout, but after you playing down most of your hand last turn and leaving the Zapdos in the active might actually make it kind of awkward for you to get a punish here.
Yeah, it is kind of awkward. And the more I play, like, the annoying thing is it turns into a massive battle against like your non-GX options, but you can't make a mistake playing Zapdos, and I already feel like I made a mistake by having bench more than 1 Jirachi in this matchup, and I feel like I'm gonna have to make more in order to keep up by using Marshadow here, and you feel like you're ahead the whole game, and then you forget that you're in Sky Scorching Light territory, and then you suddenly lose the game, and then you remember that you're playing against Ultra Necrozma.
Yeah, that's another big part of this matchup that we haven't really spoken about yet, is Sky Scorching Light. I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, Zapdos sets up fine with 1 Jirachi, 1 Absol, 1 Zapdos. You don't really need much more than that. But when you're forced to put down all of these 70 HP Pokemon, you kind of forfeit the advantage that Zapdos has of being able to get ahead and not give away multiple prizes. Really seems like a fine option here overall, though.
Yeah, had to had to use the Thunder Mountain to thin it out because I'm holding 2 other 70 HP Pokemon, which is frustrating.
I mean, obviously, if you had a skateboard there, then Guzma would have been the ideal supporter for you to play, but with the Zapdos in hand...
I'm seeing a lot of my switching options so far, and I'm not seeing Ultra Balls to find Zeraora to make it easy to retreat into Jirachi to then find switching options, which is also annoying.
I also wonder if putting Zeraora down in this matchup might actually be a pretty big hindrance, being a Pokemon I can potentially knock out in one hit.
Yeah, there's always that as well, and I think I don't really want to risk it this turn. I kind of want to just push an advantage, so I think having this energy from Tapu Koko Prism on the Absol is going to pay dividends here.
Yeah, I mean, unless you plan on using Koko GX, it's not really important to keep that on the board.
Yeah.
I definitely think that you have to get ahead.
Keep that option open to me.
Yeah, you really do need to make sure you take as many prizes before I can catch up, because, as we mentioned, I'm going to be able to catch up very quickly in the late game if I'm able to start.
And there's also the point we made of, like, as soon as the Malamars are set up and, like, the deck just recurs 130 damage, or enough to kill a Zapdos at least, with tremendous ease. Which is why Zapdos has to apply such early pressure.
For sure.
But it's definitely one of like the more anxiety-inducing matchups as far as being a Malamar player. You know, if you miss a beat, then you're going to have like a really bad time.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to target down the Absol here. Not only because it was the only way for me to guarantee a knockout, but... Yeah, it kind of gets that energy off your board that you were just talking about being kind of useful. Obviously, it doesn't matter too much, but my basic game plan here is I'm just going to try and attack the Giratina for as long as I can and try and knock out everything that isn't those 2 Jirachis, because in theory, I'll be able to take those as my last 2 prizes for the game.
Yeah, they're your last 2 prizes, ideally.
The 40 damage on the Inkay is another thing that you're probably going to want to do when you've got nothing but Giratina or Malamar, realistically, because you don't want to put on Malamar and make it easy for them to Guzma kill a Malamar. You'd much rather wink in an Inkay, so if they have a Guzma, they're just going to take down the Inkay instead of killing a Malamar. And if you force them to play an Electro Power and a Guzma just to take a Malamar, then you can kind of hope they'll eventually run out of resources if they keep playing things like that every single turn, so... It's pretty hard for you to knock out this Giratina, obviously, so you're probably going to need to find a Guzma this turn if you want to take a prize. Although, I say that, you are just an Electric Power away from attacking thanks to the Thunder Mountain being in play still.
Yeah, and then you also put the 40 on the Inkay, so I can just set up knockouts that don't need, or that need 1 less Electric Power this way as well.
Yeah, that's also true, so... Hitting the Giratina really even for 30 is still fine.
This series is all about highlighting the matchup and like the impact of like certain plays against the matchup and stuff like that. So I'm more or less like not going to try and play like with a closed matchup, like closed outlook.
Yeah.
And try to be open about what my options are, because I can either just spear and put 30 on the Giratina and make it 1 Electric Power to kill a Giratina, or I've already got the Electro Power, so I can Electro Power and Swift Run GX and make your next turn super awkward because you've just played a Guzma.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong option as well.
And you've already played 2. So, that being said, I think like the only thing that makes me lean towards spearing more than using the Swift Run GX for the knockout is just the fact that that option to me, like killing the Inkay, might not be there next turn if you just evolve it.
Yes, that is true. And also, if you have a look at my discard pile, I don't really have any Psychic Energy in there, so it's kind of hard for me to get a big knockout in this Jolteon anyway if you do Swift Run. Not impossible, of course, but it's certainly a bit awkward for me on this following turn.
Yeah. But then again, you putting the 40 damage on the Inkay just means all I have to do now is, rather than use the Spear if you evolve it, I can just Guzma it without the Electro Power for the Zapdos now. So I think I'm going to take the Swift Run and force you to have something else, because this is going to allow me to push my advantage a little more and hopefully extend the card difference between us by an extra one, so that when you come in with Ultra Necrozma, you're 1 prize short.
Yeah, it certainly seems like this is a fairly ideal time to do that, because without Guzma in hand, as you very correctly assessed, I do not have access to right now. I really can't do anything this turn except for potentially try and wall.
Especially because nowadays lists are only running one Jirachi, not one Tapu Lele GX, and you've already played yours to access turn 1 Lily.
Correct, so certainly an awkward turn for me this turn. I was kind of hoping to get a replacement stadium, if nothing else, to at least try and kind of make your turn a little more awkward next turn, but I guess Viridian Forest or Thunder Mountain doesn't really make a huge difference to you at this point.
Yeah, the almost said mana, so I'm telling you too much. Other card games. The energy cheating of Thunder Mountain has already had its effect, so now I'm just attachment away anyway. So
at this point, I'm wondering, do I just put this Ultra Necrozma in the active and hope you miss the knockout, which is kind of awkward once again, but
yeah,
I think that's my best play.
It is very awkward because I've burnt a Choice Band and 3 Electric Power, so all the options to one-shotting an Ultra Necrozma seem very, very far away.
I mean, I think it's my best option, because if I just give you the access to any other knockout, you're probably so close to winning that I can't really catch up. If you miss this knockout, it's still bad, because you can then get the return knockout and take 2 prizes next turn, but at least maybe I'll be in a position that I can close the game quickly. Let's see what happens.
I feel like half-hitting this isn't the worst thing in the world, but I think I really do want to try and dig and see if I can't find a way to take a knockout on this. But
I mean, if you can take knockout on this turn, then I think that pretty much seals the game.
I feel like even retreating into Zapdos and just hitting you for 80 makes it awkward, because then you have to find Guzma again just to target down Jolteon. And that's pretty annoying as well.
I think that's a better play than just half-hitting the active with Jolteon.
With Jolteon, yeah.
Unless you can get the one hit, but as we've mentioned, you've only got 1 electric power left, so that's kind of hard for you to find access to.
I can only do 170 theory anyway.
Yeah.
The only way I have access to knockout this turn is actually with Zeraora GX. And I would still need... Well, this deck doesn't play Energy Switch, so I don't have access to it, so...
Well, fair enough
that's
then.
Also not much.
I mean, I guess a Guzma onto a Tapu Lele would pretty much seal the game as well, but... you got a lot of ways to seal this game off at this point, I think.
Yeah, I don't really have any, I don't have any supporters in my hands, so... It would involve benching more 70 HP Pokemon at this point to try and push my advantage. I feel like the safest way... I feel like this is the safest way. Because this thins, and this way if you target down 1, I still have access to Jolteon. I don't feel like putting down a second Jolteon actually loses me the game. I feel like
probably not.
Scorching Light's the way I lose this game.
Another interesting thing that we haven't talked about in this matchup is there are healing cards that we often see in both of these decks. Obviously, Zapdos Jolteon does have access to Max Potion off of Evolpedon, which can be a pretty game-changing card with if you have to half-hit a Jolteon like we were just discussing, but also Ultra Necrozma is, or at least this list specifically, is playing an Ace Roller, which on a turn like this would be a pretty big swing card, I would say. But I think I don't have access to it on this turn.
I did think about what would happen if you had Ace Roller, but I thought the likelihood of you having Ace Roller and the way to discard the 2 Psychic back into getting the 2 Psychics back in the bin so you could Psychic recharge them would be really awkward. Obviously you would have had it because you have the Ultra Ball, so you needed was the Acerol. But yeah, I figured since you didn't have the Psychics on the bin, that would really awkward.
Yeah, it wasn't really going to happen on that turn, unfortunately, but not too big a deal overall. Unfortunately, a card I've been missing for most of this game is actually Viridian Forest. I've not been able to find it all so far, which hasn't been too big an issue, but I think it's going to cost me here where I'm unable to find an energy. I think I'd be short anyway, even with Viridian Forest, but certainly a bit of an awkward turn for me now because I'm almost forced to attack with this Ultra Necrozma, which is really bad.
Yeah, and you sort of... The lack of Viridian Forest the whole game, doesn't seem like a big deal because you sort of think about it on each individual turn, but it's sort of like the accumulative damage of me having access to Thunder Mountain and Jordan not having access to, or not just getting a basic energy but discarding a card each turn of his choice as well, which has a massive effect on how on how Ultra Malamar plays.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, the Thunder Mountain, as you mentioned, being in play has been pretty impactful for this game overall so far. So every turn that I've left that in play has just increased your options for what you can do.
Yeah.
At this point, my pretty much only game plan is... I mean, obviously you're going to take out this Ultra Necrozma this turn with a Jolteon, and I kind of just have to hope you miss a Guzma for game next turn, otherwise I can win on the following turn with Sky Scorching Light, but it's pretty much just going to come down to can you find Guzma next turn.
I think like because the game played out so well for me, now that you're on 4 prizes and I'm going to go down to 1, it's actually safe for me to use this Marshadow I've been holding onto the whole time, which sort of narrows down the scope of like what you're able to do next turn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It might even eliminate the possibility of you having access to Sky Scorching Light at all next turn, if I'm fortunate. And because I also have access to Jirachi and other switching cards, I can still, dig for this Guzma that I need next turn.
Yeah, the fact that even if I take 3 prizes next turn, as long as you don't bench a 4th, like an extra Jirachi, it's not going to matter because I'm gonna be 2 turns away from winning regardless. Whereas you're only 1 turn away from winning after this.
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. Even after such a rough start, it's still going to come down to only 1 turn difference, which is pretty good indication of how close this matchup is. It's really just going to come down to who hits the final combination of cards at the end of the game. But obviously, Zapdos Jirachi is a deck that's good at finding what it needs to when it needs to find it.
Yeah.
Having a look in your discard pile, it seems you've only used 1 Guzma so far, and you've still got a somewhat thick deck of 19 cards, but I would say it's pretty easy for you to find it with the access to Jirachi next turn as well. In this current list I'm playing right now, I don't currently have any access to shuffling his hand or anything. I don't play Let Loose Marshadow, so I'm going to have to hope that's a pretty bad 9-card hand you've got there, Blake.
Yeah. The Marshadow play definitely paid off here for me. I got my Marshadowed into a Lily and some switching cards, and then Lilied into a Guzma and other damage modifiers. So, and then I Jirachi'd into more switches. After taking prizes, I have access to more modifiers and Viridian Forest if I need to attach. But I've already secured the attachment I need on my Jolteon, so I don't have to worry about finding it this turn. So, the worst thing that could have happened to me this turn was that he replaced the stadium and then Guzma the Jolteon with 2 energy, killed that, and also shuffled my hand in. That's like the only series of plays I can't secure the victory next turn.
That was never really going to happen. I mean, assuming you don't have Guzma, my best play here is to use the GX attack, take out your Jirachis, limit your ways of finding Guzma, and obviously I have the game next turn with Guzma in hand right now to take out a Jolteon, but it seems pretty likely, Blake, that you're going to be able to take the win this turn. I have a lot of little HP Pokemon on the bench you can take out. You could probably even kill the Lele, honestly, with a hand that big.
Yeah, I do have an Electropara in my last Electropara and Choice Band in hand, but just killing the Inkay is fine.
May as well take the Inkay. Definitely a close game, considering, you had a pretty strong start. Obviously, you got the Deoxys knockout on the second turn of the game, which is a huge card in this matchup. But at the same time, it is very much a resource-based matchup. If you run out of Electro Powers too early, then you can kind of just get outwalled by some of the attackers.
And that's a lot of the time what this matchup comes down to. You have to sort of assess each turn how the game's going for you. Like, if you do Zapdos things and you set up just a Zapdos with energy and you have a couple Jirachi down and an Absol, and they have like an average or below average turn, then you're feeling pretty confident that you can just Guzma an Inkay or a Malamar each turn, and then you'll just eventually win. But in cases like that, against Jordan Start, where he got down 3 Inkays and a Deoxys with an attachment, sometimes you just got to go for some... Unfortunately, I had the access to it, but it's like assessing that if I just go with the usual strategy, I'm just going to lose to a Deoxys attacking me every turn. That I have to go for a Gambit and say, you're not going to be able to... You don't have the resources or access to the resources that you need to attack with Deoxys next turn. And that'll force you to play awkwardly for the rest of the game. And it turned out to to be the case.
Yeah, both options obviously seem fine. I think overall I would say this is probably like a 55-45 matchup. Probably in Zapdos' favour, but it's certainly a matchup that can go either way, so I would definitely expect to see both of these decks doing fairly well in Germany for the International Championship. But thank you very much for joining me today, Blake, for this matchup highlight of Zapdos versus Malamar. It's good to have you.
No worries, it's good to be here.
And yeah, we'll be doing a couple more of these in the lead up to Germany. Let us know in the comments if you like this sort of comment. And don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe if you enjoy the Sableyes content in general. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.